Hello everyone. A young man wakes up in a space isolated from others by a resistant film. The first thing he does is pull out some photos, flipping through them until he stops at one where a young woman, whom he affectionately calls Mother, is pictured. The young man pushes the shelf aside and jumps into the hallway, where another man waits to take the precious photos, which pass from hand to hand like a reminder of a past life. But there is another woman named Mary, whom Frendon loves and who is not indifferent to him. On this day, she reminds him that his real mother has been gone for a long time, and that to find her, he must escape through a gap in the fence. Finally, Mary gives him an old photo of a man named August. It is he who will help Frendon find refuge in the suburbs of freedom and learn a new life. Frendon heads for the surface exit, as his walking time is approaching, a good 15 minutes under the sun. He passes the checkpoint, and with a monitoring timer in hand, heads for the staircase. He has waited 27 years for a chance to escape, and is now even ready to die, just to avoid returning to the damned underground. Waiting for the others to be distracted, Frendon runs towards the barbed wire wall and, injuring his hands until they bleed, breaks through it. He runs through the open space and sees the silhouettes of the city ahead. He bravely removes the timer because all the warnings were false, and walks towards the place called the suburbs of freedom. People passing by look at him with surprise but do not stop him. Slipping in dirt, Frendon falls, and an old man leans over him, curious about what a young man in a jumpsuit is doing there. He confesses that he ran away to be free, but the elder laughs, for he is just white noise. It seems that the young man has never worked, and probably knows nothing about freedom. Frendon disagrees, for he knows that before corporate rule, every person was free. He learned to read from posters spread across the common land, and it was Mary who taught him to think and helped him escape. The elder observes his wounded hands and introduces himself as Saint August, a follower of the Church of Information. But Frendon had already recognized him from the photo. Upon hearing about Mary, the elder takes the young man with him. In an alley, he treats his hands and tells him that it is very dangerous for free people in the suburbs, as if caught, their organs will immediately be sold on the black market. August's church collects knowledge, for which people give something in return. The young man knows the work of the common land from the inside, stories of people, secrets, and crimes. For the church, everything is important. But to access the ecclesiastical records, where he can find his mother, special cards are required. The conversation is interrupted by a scream, and a teenage girl runs up to August, followed by two policemen. One of them mockingly says that it's time for the girl to stop being a child. The elder declares that she is under his protection, which provokes more laughter. Then the policeman draws a gun and shoots the girl. The elder lunges at the villain, trying to take his weapon, while Frendon attacks him with a stick. Another shot rings out, and August falls beside the dead child. Before the fugitive, his entire escape unfolds in reverse, and the world darkens. Sometime later, Frendon is brought to a court. Two officers, a man and a young woman named Vi, place a chair in a specific spot and listen as a mechanical voice announces the pending case number, while an eye mounted on a flexible tube scrutinizes them closely. Vi is impressed, as she is a rookie and has never seen something like this. Her colleague explains that the device uses eyes from horses or cows because they work better, and the eye itself is connected to a real human brain. Then Frendon begins to groan, and the officer shows the woman the tube at the back of the condemned man's head. It is directly connected to his brain and controls his motor functions. At this moment, another screen descends, startling Vi. The large eye retracts, transforming into the face of a stern judge. He asks them to wake up the suspect, who soon regains consciousness, but doesn't understand why the officer refers to the machine as he. The officer explains that the electronic judge has much more brain than the defendant. Meanwhile, the judge begins to ask questions, but Frendon quickly makes his own in response. Unable to confirm his identity, the judge starts the accusation. It turns out the young man attacked a police patrol that had arrived after the screams of those he murdered, old August and the teenage girl. But the young man again changes the subject, asking what the judge would do if he took action. Obviously, the chair would immobilize him immediately. The judge falls silent for a moment, while the electronic eye examines him again. Then the clamps on his limbs open, now being held only by the tube attached to his head. The man stands up and examines Vi closely, making her blush. Afterward, he positions himself on the platform that raises him to the level of the judge's face. The young man confirms his identity and hears the charges of murdering a policeman, wounding another, and fleeing the common land. If found guilty, he will be executed immediately. The officer informs him that he will be killed in the chair after 6 minutes for his final statement. Vi is horrified, but her colleague reassures her, saying it's an easy death. Then, another screen turns on and a woman appears. The lawyer claims her client is innocent, but Frendon asks for her to be dismissed for incompetence. It seems the judge is surprised, since the lawyer has all the records related to the case. But this is exactly what Frendon dislikes, because it means they share the same network and the same database. Therefore, he will defend himself and demands access to the files, and then the faces on the screens seem to freeze. Vi points this out, and her colleague is perplexed. Something like this had never happened before. The officer doesn't understand what he is doing, and Frendon explains that, if you can think, a machine cannot surpass a human, and he is very eager to find his mother. Then suddenly he asks Vi where she is from. Officer Vi mentions the lower level of the city, to which Frendon suggests she remember when she first saw the sun. The girl recounts that she was 8 years old, and that she and her brother climbed up a service escalator to see the sky. Frendon was 16 at the time and still remembers how bright it was, and that he shot the policeman because of her. The girl is stunned because she doesn't know how to interpret his words. But then, the court regains consciousness and announces that the young man can see the jurors. Although there are thousands and he would need a whole month to see them all, the trial must proceed as quickly as possible. So Frendon agrees to any group of 12 jurors, since they all are aware of what he says. And then he explains to Vi that the sun should be accessible to everyone. At that moment, the faces of the people who will judge Frendon appear on the screens. Each one says their names, and it turns out that half of them are already dead, whose minds were captured by machines and placed into a single system. The young man is outraged, as they also use the same data as the judge. It turns out the lawyer represents both the prosecution and the defense, and all of this can be influenced by the judge. The judge again gets lost, as they don't do that. However, Frendon is confident that this is possible, and the court system crashes again, and the young man loses consciousness due to a blow to the brain. The officer is shocked, having never seen something like this. Normally, the accused scream, beg, and then the chair silences their vocal cords, and after the trial, kills them. It seems they will have to call the technicians. Vi feels pity for the jurors and admires the courage of the accused. And at that moment, he finds himself in a field. His head is held by August, who comforts him. He is nothing. He is just white noise. But even a small person is dangerous to the machines. Yes, he might die, but he will still win, because the truth does not die. Frendon regains consciousness in Vi's knees. The officer does not understand what the young man is trying to achieve, since it is the first time in 50 years that the court is impartial, about which Frendon questions. When was the last time they judged a rich person here? Then the judge powers on, and the circus continues. Frendon insists on dismissing the lawyer, and the court agrees. He then presents the evidence, the bodies of the dead and the gun with Frendon's fingerprints. But first, he tells the jurors who he is and where he comes from. Born in the common land, he is nobody. People are forced to live underground all their lives, without parents or close relatives. They have no books, and only see the sun once every 6 months for 15 minutes. And he didn't kill anyone, and demands to see the camera footage. But the court explains that they are constantly breaking due to vandals. Moreover, there is a living witness. It is the second policeman, who insists that they were saving the girl from the rapist, Frendon. His partner dropped the gun, which the defendant picked up and shot everyone. And then Frendon demands to call his witness, Old August, since his brain can also be connected to the system. And while the court desperately searches for an exit, Frendon arranges a meeting with Vi. The court finally makes a decision, and everyone sees what really happened. Furthermore, it turns out that August, before dying, said that the first to shoot was the policeman. The jurors are agitated, but the judge insists that Frendon killed the policeman, and that is punishable by death. The court announces the discussion. The officer runs after the technicians when the jurors announce that Frendon is innocent. But then the court shuts down, and those present are informed that the system failed. Frendon provoked an unacceptable emotional response, and all facts were erased and the trial continues. In the next minute, Frendon is sentenced to death. Despite Vi's protests, he is handcuffed to the chair, when the girl confesses that she would have been very proud if he were her friend. In the next minute, a probe is inserted into his head, and he dies. Then the technician arrives, explaining that the system failed because Frendon was simply supposed to sleep. The shocked girl repeats that he was simply murdered, but the failure was relentless. Later, she enters the courtroom, and suddenly the image of Frendon appears before her. He explains that the system captured part of his brain, not understanding that he would remain himself inside it. The girl wants to leave, but the projection of the young man is in the way. He is alive, albeit without a body. He, along with August inside this machine, will fight to free humanity. V admits that she liked him a lot, but he is lost to her forever. And then Frendon says they can be together in their minds. After the speeches, the film discusses how justice is not just a matter of the mind, but also of the heart. What do you think? Is the movie worth seeing or not? Leave your answer in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the summary of your favorite films.